Welcome to AboutFACE Theatre presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, Hana Sharif. Hana is the artistic director of the Repertory Theatre of St. Louis. In her multifaceted theatre career, she has worked in many roles, including as an artistic leader, a producer, director, and playwright. She began her professional career in 2003 at Hartford Stage in Connecticut, where she rose from an entry-level role to associate artistic director in just 7 years. During that time, she also worked as director of new play development there. She then, in 2012, moved to being the program manager of the esteemed ArtsEmerson program. And then in 2014, she became the associate artistic director of Baltimore Center Stage, where she directed acclaimed productions of Pride and Prejudice, The Christians, and Liaisons Dangereuses. Her other work at Baltimore includes strengthening community engagement, producing multiple world and regional premieres, and helping to guide the theatre through a multi-million-dollar building renovation and rebranding. She's been in her position in St. Louis since 2019. Hana, you're very welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm so excited to be talking to you and to the folks who follow your AboutFACE Ireland.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll dive right in. So Hana, the first question is just what play or experience first got you into theater?
It's such a hard question. Honestly, if you ask my mom, she will tell you that I was a very dramatic child. I don't know if that's actually true, but what I will say is that the way I understood the world from the youngest of ages was through story. So I was always writing, little plays, forcing my brothers to perform them. So I kind of entered the work, I think, as a writer first, and then without knowing it as a director, trying to kind of build those worlds that I saw in my head. I remember some very pivotal shows that my parents were very into culture. They believed that part of a well-raised child is to have these cultural experiences. So we would go to the opera and we go to the ballet and we go to the theater and we go to street festivals and see street performers, that all of that art was just kind of part of the world that I grew up in. And so one of the first plays that I saw, my father took me to New York to see was A Soldier Story. And I was probably too young to have seen it at the time that I saw it in the 80s, but it was one of my kind of first memorable experiences. And I don't even think I understood everything happening in the show, but I felt the emotional pull of it. One of the plays when I was a little bit older that really moved me was Bring on the Noise, Bring on the Funk. I'd seen many different plays, but I'd never seen one quite stylistically like that. And it blew up in my understanding of how you can use all of the elements of art, music, dance, movement, and story to create an experience that's really cathartic. And so those are two of the things that stand out to me. But I honestly will say I never understood myself in the world without seeing myself as part of an unfolding story. And so I think there's been a natural evolution in my career of wanting to using story to ask questions and answer questions that feel fundamental to my sense and humanity.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Beautiful.
Fantastic. Okay, well, Hana, you were talking there about different stories. So I'm going to put you on the spot and say, what's a great play that you love and why?
You have all these hard questions. I love it.
Yeah.
So one of the plays I think is a perfectly written play is Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night. Structurally, it is so it's so well crafted, where the turns take, how you're guided emotionally. And it is, in the tradition of the traditional American family drama, but it is a profound example of great art. And so that's one of my favorite plays, honestly, of the kind of American classics. And it is not just because I find the story to be emotionally wrenching, but that when I look at that play, and when I was developing myself as a writer, the goal was to tell a story as succinct, as complete, and as profound as that one. So that's one of those plays. And then one of the plays that I say haunts my dreams, a play that I first encountered as a teenager, that I directed for the first time in my early 20s, and that I believe I'm supposed to direct again, and probably a third time, depending on my life journey, is Adrienne Kennedy's Funny House of a Negro. It is one of the most complicated journeys. And I will say that it is the kind of play that it's nonlinear. It has many abstractions. It has such depth. But as I develop as a human being, as I develop in my journey as an African-American woman, my understanding of the nuances in that story changes dramatically. How I read the text as a 20-year-old is so different than how I experience that text now in my 40s. And it's a play that I think I just scratched the surface of the first time I directed it. And I thought, I mean, it was an incredible process. And I felt like I turned myself inside out to try and get inside this play. And then, you know, you look back a decade later and you're like, oh no, baby. That was cute. You just barely scratched the surface on it. And so I think that it's a play that I would be excited to approach at this stage of my life. And it's a play that, you know, 20 years from now, I want to approach again, because there is such depth, and it is wholly unique as an experience. I can't think of another play that challenges me in the way that that play does.
Fantastic. I love that. It's great to revisit things. So can you tell us about a time in your theatrical life, whichever part of that journey that you want to look at, where things turned out differently than you expected them to?
I would say all of it. You know, my mother and my grandmother used to have a saying, like, we plan and God plans, and God is the best of all planners, right? You think you know what your journey is supposed to be, or you map out these ideas, especially when you're young. It's like, oh, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this, and this is what it's going to look like. And my experience on a global level is that actually the universe is conspiring for something so much bigger than you can imagine for yourself. And so that part of the process, one of the things that I've learned on this journey is, rather than being so focused on the thing that I'm hoping to get to, I really try and stay open to the values that I bring to the work, which for me is about how art transforms community, how art has the ability to crack open our understanding of ourselves and our humanity, and also introduce us to the humanity of people who are quite different than us. And I try and lean into where the stories, where the texts, where the questions are guiding in every aspect of my work, as a producer, as a director, and as a writer. And what's been really wonderful is that it has meant that there have been many adventures I could not have planned for myself. One of which that I would point to is, you know, when I was very young, I started out with a group of friends, as many people I think do, with a kind of storefront. We came up with a mission statement for the theater in my college apartment over pizza and soda and beer, you know, and we scrapped together our money to put up our first show, and like took over space at the university, but launched this kind of small scrappy theater company. Where we were making art that we loved because no one told us we couldn't, or even those who did, we didn't believe them, right? We just did it because we could. And it wasn't business, it was heart driven. And then it became a business because we were so dedicated to it, and it started to grow. And so there was a point where I was like, maybe about 5 years in, that I could do this in this way for the next 20 years, and we could continue to grow in these small increments. But none of us had trained as managers. None of us had trained in the systems of running a company. We were artists who came together as a collective to make art that turned into a company. And so I had this moment where I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go work for one of those big multi-million-dollar theater companies, and I'm going to learn how they do it. They know something I don't know. I want to steal the master's tools. I want to go in, and learn. And then I'm going to come back out. I'm going to go in for a year or two. I'm going to learn all I can. I'm going to come back to our small scrappy theater company, and we're going to be better, stronger, faster. That was the plan. And fast forward to almost 10 years later, I was still at this multi-million-dollar theater company, evolving and learning and growing, but it's not what I intended or expected, but it is how the path unfolded. Every time I thought, okay, I've learned all that I can in this position, and now it's time to go back, there'd be a new challenge, there'd be a promotion that gave me an opportunity to cut my teeth in new ways. And I saw almost a decade of my life invested in an organization that wasn't my own small scrappy theater company. And if you had told me when I decided to apply for my first internship at Hartford Stage, that almost a decade later, I would be the associate artistic director of play development, you know, still there in Hartford, I would have told you were absolutely crazy, because that is not in my plan. But part of it is letting go of your expectations and letting the opportunities and your spirit guide you on the journey for your career, being willing to take big risks because that's where the reward is. I don't believe in fear-based decisions ever. So if something is scary, then I got to unpack it, or I got to lean into it. And I've got to decide, I can't be controlled by fear. And when you release yourself from fear, everything is infinite possibility. And so, you know, I wouldn't be the artistic director of a $9.5 million theater today if I hadn't said yes to the doors that continue to open for me, even though that wasn't my plan.
Wow.
Wow. I love it.
That's fantastic. Okay, Hana, so you're talking there a bit about, you know, the spirit guiding your journey and so forth. So what is it that keeps you coming back to the theater? What moves you? What excites you about theater?
The truth of it, you know, that there are very few, you know, collusive fiction lies to reveal truth, right? That there are very few spaces where we can, one, have a communal experience, that people come into a space together, be it virtual space or physical space, and lean into a shared experience, but walk away with wholly different things, right? That it is both communal and intimate and individualized, that it's in that space, in that darkened theater, that you can see yourself, the truth of your life reflected back to you, the good and the bad, right? The foibles of our personalities and the triumphs of our existence. And that reflection, whether we know it or not, whether it's conscious or not, is doing what I call soul work on us. So when you see your life experiences, your challenges, your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, your joys, your possibilities reflected back on you, your body allows it to penetrate in a way that's different than if someone were to tell you about yourself, right? If someone you know, you can write a person to ask the questions or to reflect the challenges, and you don't know how many people are touched, walk away thinking about themselves or the world differently. You know, I love when I go into an experience that is completely different than my own lived experience in the theater, because it's a human connection that's being made. You don't have to look like me. We don't have to be, you know, we don't have to self-identify by the same gender or the same, you know, socioeconomic status for me to see myself in you. And also to see you as fully human, sometimes for the first time. You know, we live in a world where there are so many divides. We live in a world where it can be hard for some to accept the full humanity of people who are not like them. But I think the theater has a way of erasing that, even temporarily. And that some piece of that erasure, some piece of that restructuring, some piece of that deconstruction of your bias stays with you long after you leave the theater. And so I'm addicted to it, right? Like, I just think it's, I live for the moment, that anticipation of breath that we all take in together when the lights rise. That's my drug of choice.
Yes. I fully support. So, you know, speaking of theater and, you know, and of course, which is what we're doing today, but what, you know, are there any skills or anything that you've learned on your journey that you that you feel have been really beneficial to you outside of the theater?
Absolutely. I mean, look, if you're a great producer, you can really do any job, right? Because fundamentally, it's about problem solving. The skills that when you are, helping run a company, it's about being able to read the energy in a room, being able to read people, being able to understand how to connect, being able to see a problem 17 feet before you get to it and mitigate it before it turns into crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all skills that are developed on the ground floor of the work of producing plays or theatrical experiences. And I find that producers, stage managers, they are the most competent human beings to conquer any challenge. Stage managers, I feel like there's so many governmental problems that we should put stage managers in charge of. At the very least, it will be organized on time. You put a great producer with it, it'll be on budget. All the questions will be surfaced. Clockwork. They may not have the answers, but they'll whip you into shape and have it organized and ready, and a process that works to get to the answers, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there's so many marketable skills that come out of the American theater, not the American theater, but the global theater industry. But at the heart of it, it's hard for people who don't do what we do to understand how many hands have to touch it, how interconnected the work is, how much collaboration is required to get from one day to the next, from page to stage. And those muscles are incredibly valuable and transferable across industries.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, Hana, this has been fantastic. I feel like you've packed so much into a few minutes. I'm like, it's so much great stuff. Thank you so much. Just as a bonus question, can you tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
Yes. So, we have reopened the theater, which is so exciting. This last year and a half to 2 years has been extraordinarily challenging for our field globally. I never could have imagined that theater would be shut down across the world, right? That theaters would go dark. Theater didn't stop. But the structures went dark. Artists have to art, right? Artists have to make art and connect. And so I'm actually really encouraged by the innovation and by the pushing of the boundaries of what people think theater is, like what that nexus point is between art and technology and how we tell stories around it. So there's a lot of work that we've done in the last year around that I'm excited about continuing. But we reopened with 2 world premieres, a world premiere musical that just closed on Sunday called Dreaming Zanzile, about the life of Marion Makeba. And we are opening on Friday. We're in previews right now for another world premiere called The Gradient by Steph Del Rosso, which is a wicked satire set in the very near future at a center that rehabilitates people who have been accused of sexual misconduct using an algorithm. And the kind of core of the story is this open question about whether or not you can mass produce forgiveness.
Wow.
And it is smart and funny and timely and very, very exciting. One of those kind of technological shifts that we've made because of the time that we've just come through is that for almost all of our productions, we are also doing a recording of them and offering a stream that can be streamed all over the world. So access to the stories on our main stage from wherever you are. And so like the week after opening or week or so after opening, those streams become available for purchase on our website. So if anyone's interested in plugging into The Gradient, that can happen from the Repertory Theater of St. Louis. But Steph Del Rosso, I think, is an amazing artist, someone that I think is going to have a very, very meaningful, impactful career on theater in our country. And I'm so excited to be able to launch this work into the canon. And it has been joyful, honestly, to be back in the room making work. And everyone's dedicated to staying safe and staying in the bubble and, doing things that you never thought people would do, like just not, everything's deliberate. Everyone's being really careful with each other because we know how precious it is to be able to do this, to make this work. And then I guess the last thing I would say is I am in preparations for the show that I am directing at the theater this year. which is a new production of A Christmas Carol, which will launch an annual holiday tradition. So it's a huge production, lots of magic, lots of excitement. And it's a production that I think is really a reflection of my values in terms of being a regional based artist and artistic leader. So it's a large cast for this time, but we have local professional actors, we have local non-professional actors, we have students from the conservatory that we partner with in the show. We have 2 youth companies, 20 young people under the age of 12 who were in the show, along with some of the most phenomenal professional actors from both coasts, East and West Coast in Chicago, in the Midwest in the country. And so it really is this kind of epic artistic theatrical experience that has folks from across the theatrical ecosystem in it to tell a story. And I think that at our best, that's what we can do in theaters that sit in the middle of the country and serve a region of folks that don't have access, daily to the theater happening in New York. But also that we can be a hub for new work. And those are things that I find thrilling. Those are the things that help me get up every morning and come back to fight the good fight. And it's work that I hope audiences continue to enjoy and appreciate across the country.
Oh, beautiful.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Sounds so exciting,
all
Hana.
the best with all of the above. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Such a joy.
Absolutely. And I hope that one day that we might be able to actually meet in person. So I will keep in touch that when it's back to traveling internationally and it's safe. I look forward to being able to connect with the work that you guys are doing as well.
Thanks. That was wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful. Yeah. And thank you to you, the audience, for joining us. If you enjoyed the interview, please like below, follow AboutFACE, and share, because we believe theater makes life better. See you next time on AboutFACE Presents 5 Questions With.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.